We're excited to have you joining us for a great conversation with Eboné Bell. Today, we're going to focus on how we can, in the first 30, build really belonging communities. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Eboné, and we'll get right into a fantastic conversation that'll empower you to build belonging quickly, whatever role you happen to have. So, Eboné is not just a dynamic speaker and a voiceover artist. She was an entrepreneur that founded Tag Magazine, and it was an award winning publication for LGBTQ women. And she's been featured in Forbes as an inspiring Black entrepreneur, changing our world. And she truly is doing that one audience at a time. And she creates lasting impact with each interaction on stage or in her consulting work. And I love the fact that she's also a fellow Maryland Terrapin, biased as I am. We're all amazing. But she started an organization on that campus that still is impacting students there for LGBTQ women, people of color, excuse me. And decades later, it's hard to believe that it's decades since she started it, but it's still making a positive impact as a lasting legacy at the University of Maryland. She inspires people nationally with her passion for belonging, leadership, and inclusivity. And when she's not out changing the world, she is focused on self care, staying hydrated, and living her best life with a beautiful cat and an amazing partner. Excited to have you with us for this conversation, Ebony. Thank you for taking the time out to be here.
Yes, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I want you to know the one thing I took from that introduction was that you couldn't believe it's been decades. So I will take that as a compliment.
Seriously, it's for someone that looks as old as me, it's really kind of it's hate inducing. You look this good. So, all right, well, let's get started into something good. I think what we'll have is a wonderful audience, and there'll be people looking from different perspectives. There'll be some student leaders who are looking at how they can be on the ground making change, at pulling people in, and this idea of what belonging really can do, what success looks like, and how they can effectuate that change. There'll be people that are coordinating these student leaders, and there'll be people that are setting the whole stage up, that are running entire programs for, but not just the first 30 days, which are such an amazing opportunity, but for the whole year. And so when we're thinking about those different pieces of our audience and we're having some conversation, I know you will direct some tidbits for each of those audiences. And then there's some broad framework for them all to think about how we can make this first impression not just an impression, but an invitation. And then also empower those students to take that invitation to build this really an opportunity to belong. And so, if I'm going to start with sort of the why this matters, what what does success look like in terms of building a community of belonging? What does that look like, and why does that matter? Whether that's within an institution itself or a subset for maybe just the business school or maybe just a student organization. Why does the effort of creating a structure or a culture that empowers belonging, why does that matter?
It matters for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, everyone deserves to belong. I can't say that enough. I don't care who you are, your background, how you look, where you come from. Every single person deserves to belong. So let's just get that out of there right off the brink. So, another reason is everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and respected. And I think all of us want that, all the way from 18 years old to 89 years old. We all want to be seen and heard in some form or fashion. And that can look in so many different ways. You talked about, like let's say the engineering department, maybe theater. I don't care what it is. Everybody deserves to be seen, heard, and respected. And when you feel like you belong, that's exactly how you feel, and that's exactly how you show up. Another thing is, I have watched too many folks who feel like they don't belong, whether it's staff and faculty or students. When they don't feel like they belong, they leave. And I know a lot of institutions, organizations, we don't want that. We want people to stick around. We want people to feel like we are a family here. But sometimes that happens, and we want to bring people in and we want them to stay. Unfortunately, there are students that I've heard from that's like, I felt like I wasn't seen or heard, or, this campus didn't care about me and who I am. And they left and they went somewhere else. And I can assume that's not always a great thing for any campus or any organization. So that's just two reasons why belonging really matters.
There's a tension sometimes, especially in the first 30 days.
Mm,
There's a tension between I want to be comfortable. I'm used to A, B, and C, whether that's A, B, and C type of people or understanding of the world or background or even course of study. I want to be comfortable and that natural pull back to comfort. But there's so much value in challenging people outside of their comfort zone to try new things, to try on a new idea, to interact with someone who isn't like you, thinks like you, is from those same places. And the tension in that starting point that happens between a pull toward comfort and an institution pulling someone in some places that might be not so comfortable so that they can
mm.
grow. And at the same time, how we use those two tensions um, in a positive way toward the benefit of those students. Framework wise, how can we think about those two tensions actually being used in a valuable way? Understanding them both, but strategically using that reality to create some of that opportunity for belonging outside of what's most immediate, natural, and seemingly comfortable. What can someone who's architecting this all think about, or a way that they can approach this to think about how we can start that process?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we need to look at it that one is not necessarily better than the other, right? There's no right or wrong way. I know for me, I think it is important to be able to have that sense of maybe safety with people who can understand, your background. So maybe you're finding yourself with a lot of folks from the South because there are certain things that, you all understand culturally, or there's a reason that here in DC we have a DC Black Pride because there are just certain things that we can understand, right? So I want to make sure that we understand that one is not better than the other. I think both should be happening, and I completely understand that. British physicist Tim Berners-Lee, he says we need diversity of thought in the world to face new challenges. That is why it's so important to surround ourselves with diversity of thought, different people from different backgrounds, because they challenge us, they allow us to grow. Yes, students are going to grow because they take different classes, they learn different things, but sometimes I think one of the best things we get from college is learning from different people and meeting different people of different backgrounds, because sometimes we also have our own biases about things, and because we met this person, we're like, oh wow, I didn't know that, or I thought it was this whole time. What a beautiful aha moment in those stories, in those meets, whatever that looks like. um, I remember I was talking to students after a program, and there was a young lady who raised her hand. She was a young white lady from like a small town, and I was so impressed with her because she said, I specifically sat next to these people during orientation because they don't look like me, and I realized I grew up in this type of town, and if I limit myself, I'm going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. The kids are all right. They are. They really, really are. And I just was so impressed because she got it. she got it. And I just think about her even still today, like all the things that have opened up for her, all the opportunities of learning and finding community, because community isn't just the people that look like you. Community is the people that surround you and embrace you, no matter how they look or where they come from.
Yeah. And I think that idea of safety sometimes also gives the mirage. You find your people that it gives this mirage that there won't be disagreement, there won't be
Mm,
conflict, there won't be friction that can cause, growth, but also tear and problems. And so I speaking to that. I think there's an opportunity for whether it's the architect or the person on the ground to model it as a student leader or an orientation advisor, an RA, those paraprofessionals that are close. As I think there are opportunities for them to model it and maybe opportunities for us to teach. That friction happens. It's going to happen in small ways and large ways, whether we're
mhm.
in safe groups of our own tribe, our own people, or you're that person like the woman that you mentioned that says, "I'm going to sit down in a new group and I'm going to learn." There's that friction's going to be there. What can we do to start to teach skills and a framework for a student to think about how that friction interacts with them and their mindsets and while still being safe, but to allow that growth? What can we do to think about that from high level? And then maybe you could spend some time even for that student who's there and is open to learn and wants to model it. What could they do to address that friction and look at it in a positive way?
Intentionality. Everything that I'm probably going to talk about is going to be around intentionality. It's okay to literally communicate that. When I talk about like having courageous conversations, and yes, there's going to be friction, we first have to say that out loud. I think sometimes we feel like we have to protect people because we don't want conflict. And I get that. Who doesn't want conflict? But that's just going to happen. So I think we have to be honest about that and intentional about that. And whether it's you as an administrator, a student leader, or you're doing some student orientation, it's okay to admit that within those first 30 days, it's going to happen. And for you to be able to say, hey, this is normal and it's absolutely, will not be the first time this happens. It's really important that we are real with students. We're real with our coworkers. Sometimes when I have these conversations, also, I'm like, why don't you just say that? You know what I mean? Because sometimes I feel like we don't have real conversations with each other. And I think students will respect you more if you're just real about these things and say, this is going to happen and it's okay, but let me give you a framework. Let me give you some tips on how to get through this. Uh, I just think it's so normal and we need to normalize it. And I'm not saying let's normalize having conflict or fighting with one another, but I think we need to normalize that these things happen. And here is how I can help you through this, whether that's counseling, I don't know, student counseling, or, you bring in these two people or these two groups and, hey, how do we have this conversation? How do we have respectful dialogue around this? And what are we all bringing into this that maybe we need to recognize and throw out of the situation as well? Because there's a lot of different frameworks you can use as far as how do we just sit down, put our own biases, lens to the side, and how do we figure out how to have a conversation and move forward? But I think the first thing is always, let's be real. Students love when there's a mentor, a teacher, administrator that is always keeping it real with them. Period. I know I can literally tell you the people in my life when I was growing up that were those people because you respect them so much more. Um, Side story. I had Miss DeBerry. I told you I could name them all. She was, and I know it's not college, but it was middle school, but it starts early. And I remember it was a minute to the bell was ringing after class. And in front of everybody, she saw my binder. It was a mess. In front of the class, she went like this and shook it. Papers went everywhere. I was devastated. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna miss class." She was like, "So pick it up." And I promise you, I never had a messy binder again. And she was one of my favorite teachers because I realized in that moment she wanted better for me. And she didn't treat me, I mean, some can say it was like a child, but it was kind of like I was her niece. And something I always say to students when I talk to them is I always say, I'm going to always keep it real with you because I think that also shows respect for them.
Hmm.
That was a random side story, but I just never forget her because she always kept it real for me, with me. And I knew she did that because she respected me and she wanted me to do better.
I love the phrase, I'm going to provide you the respect of my honesty.
Absolutely. And
And
again, it's just respect for everyone in the room.
I think we can do that well. I don't think it has to be abusive or caustic or, creating friction so much, but the respect of our honesty allows us to learn from each. Honest people disagree. And the respect of our honesty within a structure, especially if we're able to create a feeling of belonging before, and I'm going to move towards some of that, that it allows that to help everybody grow. You touched on
Mm,
that earlier. I think that first part you started with, I want to highlight again that I just love it, that the intentionality of saying this isn't an accident, it's part of the design. It
mm,
is a feature and not a bug that you are going to have some friction with a roommate, with someone in a student organization, or someone that you're teamed up with in this new student orientation group. That it's a feature, not a bug. And how do we allow that feature to grow a deeper relationship, a deeper understanding, or at least leave you with a a takeaway that's of value.
mm.
And I think there are ways that professionals and student professionals can model that. And I know that you teach some of this, so I would love if you could just talk a little bit about how someone, whether in their office or they're going to see students will see people working together, not necessarily always behind the scenes, but running these events and planning out activities. How can they model that behavior of that respect of honesty and civil discourse when there are disagreements? How can they, what are some of the ways that they can both do it and do it ostentatiously so it can be seen that this is the culture through the demonstration of their behavior?
Yeah. So when I talk about navigating difficult conversations, having civil discourse, I have two separate ones. I have ones for students and I have ones for faculty and staff because, let's be real. It's the administrators, it's the faculty and staff that have a little bit more say when it comes to coming up with guidelines or policies. And not to say that students are not empowered in their own ways, but it's a little bit different, right? When it comes to policies and things like that. One of the things I talk about, and I literally create it in real time with administrators and faculty and staff, is we need to come up with ground rules. Essentially, guidelines that everyone adheres to. So, no matter if I'm going to, Professor Smith or, this student leader or this higher up administrator, no matter what, I'm going to get the same respect and guidelines that you all have created. Sometimes I say, hey, put it on the wall. So even when the students maybe come into your office, they know here are the things that we are committed to when we have these difficult conversations with you. So, for example, one of the ones that actually comes up a lot when I work with faculty and staff is assume positive intent. That's one of the guidelines that people will put in place. So, you want to ground yourself. I guess sometimes that situations aren't always, lollipops and butterflies, right? It's going to be some tense conversations, but it's nothing like taking a breath and saying, you know what? I don't know what's going to come from this. So always assume positive intent. Uh, and so that is a great place to start is what are just even three things we can commit to? I know you all are busy out there. I know it's really hard sometimes to, come up with 10 plus things when you have all these things going on. But even if you just commit to three, what does that look like? So you all remain consistent no matter who your students are speaking with. These are the three things you're committed to no matter what.
Oh, I love that. The ground rules posted, knowing these are the
Hmm.
rules of the road.
Yep.
There are
Moving forward.
lines, there are lines on the side, so we stay on the road. There's a posted speed limit, like how we are going to operate within our student organization on our floor, as an RA, or those expectations, and then modeling them yourself. Um, it adds so much to creating a whatever that desired culture is, and when the
That's it.
desire is honesty and not necessarily focus on just safety, but on interactions that are improving each other, starting with that idea of the expectation of positive intent. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and you said it. It's creating a culture that you want to see uh, throughout your campus, whether or your department or in your residence hall. And yes, I build that with faculty and staff, but I also encourage them to do the same thing in their residence halls with their students. So when that RA is having a difficult conversation, or maybe there are two people that aren't getting along, we sit in the space, the lounge, whatever, and there are the poster rules and guidelines for us to remember. So you can say, hey, Sarah, don't forget, this is what we want to do. Or one of the guidelines sometimes people come up with is don't interrupt. Let the person, these are basic things, but sometimes we need to see it to remember. And what you're doing is you're creating a culture where everyone feels seen and they feel heard. And it goes right back to why that's so important. So yeah, you nailed it.
Before we get into, because I want to spend some time and we will talk about safety and
Mm,
individuals making sure that they feel they know where their limits are and their boundaries are and how to address that. But before we get to that, I want to spend a little bit of time on how um, we can, as individuals that are leading student organizations, it can feel a lot of pressure. We can feel a lot of pressure that if we're leading this group toward a desired culture, I might make a mistake. I might say the wrong thing. I might ask the wrong question. I might be so ignorant, and I know that I'm ignorant, that I just don't know certain things, that I'm afraid to walk into that room of conversation because I don't know what's inside. Is there a way that we can empower students with a little more courage because they also have skills to make up mistakes? That
mm,
I can ask a question because I know if I ask a wrong question, I have the skills to be able to navigate that relationship afterward, and it's not going to be ruined. I mean, I want our students and the paraprofessionals or the leaders to be able to lead with a courage and confidence, but I think it can be really scary, and we have to acknowledge they don't want to hurt someone, they don't want to offend someone, they want that real good culture of belonging, but they can mess it up. How do we
mm.
empower these student leaders to lead with that courage?
It takes practice. I can't say that enough. Everything that we're talking about takes practice, but you need to put it into practice. So, one of the things that I encourage student leaders to do is acknowledge the mistakes in real time as soon as it happens. Because guess what? We are all human and we are going to all make mistakes. But it is so powerful for a room full of students or your fellow student leaders to see you do it in real time. Because what you're doing now is giving them or empowering them to do the exact same thing. And it goes right back to creating that culture that you want to see. And I know it's scary. There are a lot of people who don't want to admit when they're wrong. I used to be one of those people, and it absolutely took practice. Shout out to the Capricorns out there because you know what I'm talking about. But it also feels really empowering when you do it too. Do it in real time. Say, you know what? I realize that I made a mistake. Or, maybe you don't realize you made a mistake in that, uh, in that moment, but later on you do. Address it as soon as you can to everyone and say, hey, I'm human and I recognize that I made a mistake. That was not my intention. And I need you all to know that I recognize that and I want to do better. And I'm always here for any feedback or suggestions or thank you, so and so, for bringing that to my attention. Because it also allows them to see that you heard their suggestions, that you're hearing what they're saying. So that's for everyone. That's student leaders and up. Because man, it's so empowering to see someone in this high level, right? As a student, you see them, in this high level to say, you know what, I made a mistake. We're starting to see parents do it with their kids. And years ago, you didn't see a lot of that happening, but people are starting to break that pattern. And people respect that when you see it. We are human, and it's nothing to just say, I made a mistake. There have been times I've been on stage and I talk about like unlearning, and I'll use a word in that moment, and then I'll just right on stage I'll take it right back because I want them to see it in real time too, that I make mistakes too, even though I'm talking about this, I'm not perfect. So one of the words I try not to say anymore is crazy, and I've caught myself saying it a couple of times. Or I call students kids and I try not to call them kids. So I'll literally do it in real time and say, wait a minute, I don't want to call you all that. That's, I'm working on not doing that. And then boom, I just keep it moving. I know it seems like really small, but that's a powerful message that you are giving in that moment. So I would say, bare minimum, acknowledge it as soon as it happens. It makes you also relatable to students as well. It makes you relatable to your fellow student leaders. It makes you just relatable. And maybe you don't realize it, but just doing that continues to not only create a culture of belonging, a culture of understanding, but you also might be leaving a legacy because the next person in charge is going to see what you did and so on and so forth. And you're going to create something way after you head out, into the quote unquote real world. So I would say that's a great place for people to start.
Well, you look too young to be calling students kids. So that's a
Absolutely. And yeah,
callback. That's a
mainly
callback.
that.
But it's almost that you're just describing that one of the key elements of really being a good leader, whether you're a student leading students or a young professional leading students and others, or a seasoned, not old, a seasoned professional leading all sorts of people, is the value of humility
Mm,
as a leadership tool, the value of hearing where you might not be as right, completely right, um, or maybe even really wrong. But the
hmm
value of being able to hear that, and the value to the culture of modeling the hearing that, the modifying behavior because you hear that, that models behavior you want others to live so that they can step out and ask a great question that's scary. They can try to learn something and know that they may fail, but the cost of failure isn't, a sentence of being cast out. The cost is that you're going to learn and grow, and it might be a painful experience to some degree, but that it you're still part and belonging to this group. And I think that's a great lesson for all leaders.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. You also use the word safe. It's also creating a safe space. In that moment, that person is like, you're exhaling because you feel safe in this space. There is a there's a difference for someone not to recognize it and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say anything wrong. and immediately you tense up and you feel like you're not safe in that space. It also creates safety as well with you just having humility, and the person is like, wow, I feel like I can have a real conversation no matter how hard it's going to get. I feel like I can at least talk to this person and we can have some sort of mutual respect, which is really how you want to start any conversation.
I want to transition into that, which I kind of hinted we'd be going toward or
Hmm.
stated we'd be going toward. Students are going to, especially if we encourage them that all of these experiences, all of these student groups, a wide, diverse campus of thought and idea and activity is going to have some things on that buffet that just don't agree with us.
Mm.
Um, you're lactose intolerant. There's a whole lot of cheese on that tray that you should avoid for your own good. And in reality, there are students that, that are in campuses that aren't designed or executed beyond the design where everyone will find belonging in every group and tribe and club, and where every hall that they might live on or every space that they might live in isn't great or even right or even completely safe for them.
Mm.
And there are going to be those, those times when they need to be able to reflect on where they are and make sure that they're safe and they're good and they're taken care of. And that first has to come from them. And there are lots of resources, and I'm going to ask you to touch on some of those in terms of strategy. But as much as we want to create communities of belonging in large and small scale, there'll be students that are in some of those that it didn't succeed. If a student is in that space, they start to look around and recognize or feel in their gut that this isn't right, whether it's segmented to just a conversation or larger in terms of their place in that space. If you could talk through some strategies for that individual, both for themselves and the resources that they might find on a campus, to talk through how to find a place of safety if they're not looking around and seeing they're in one right now.
So I'm going to start it with the conversation first, and then how do we make sure that this student feels safe moving forward? I always say change happens in conversation. Everything's got to start in conversation. So it's not like, oh, you don't feel safe. Let me throw you over here and, to this person, or we'll figure it out. Bare minimum, as soon as you start to see that, it needs to happen in conversation. And I say that this is a complete side note, but also, hey, a way to also just fun facts about me. Somehow I've become the HOA president. In my community, okay? I went to a meeting. The president was rolling out. I happened to be there, and here we are. So it's been a journey. One of the we got an email about someone parking too close to somebody in the spaces, and literally my first question was, have you talked to this person yet? Like, have you had it? And I know this sounds so silly, but like, have you just asked them, hey, do you mind, whatever, right? So anyway, I say this because we have to open our mouths and we have to have a conversation. So to me, in this situation, what it first looks like is people feel safe that they can tell you that they don't feel safe and they feel uncomfortable. So, what that looks like is you are not going to be able to change everything. That's just not going to happen. And again, I talked about being real with people. But what you can do is say, tell me what you're feeling. How are you doing here? I may not be able to do everything, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that you feel like you belong here, right? So it also gives them, hey, they can't wave a magic wand. They can't, all of a sudden create a new dorm room building for this person, right? But it also again, provides safety to say, you can talk to me about anything, and I'm going to do my very best that I can. So, one, it should start there. So, this person, one, feels like they can say anything to you and they feel safe with you. Because if you don't have that, you're never going to know that that person doesn't feel safe or they feel uncomfortable. Once they do have the question and you have done everything in your power that you can, you are recognizing maybe that there are some problematic things happening because, yes, change happens in conversation, but also realizations happen in conversations. And I can't tell you how many RAs, student leaders, people that, in student affairs, conversations I've had where they've been taken aback of some things that have happened. And sometimes I feel like those are opportunities for you, learning opportunities. So there are going to be times that you aren't going to be able to do everything. However, there are resources and people on campus that can help. So, for example, if there is, and I'll just say it because I'm on screen right now. Let's say there's a Black queer student, right? I started a group on campus for that. And maybe you don't look like them, identify like them, but they have come to you because regardless, you have been a wonderful mentor. They feel safe with you. You don't have to look like somebody to make them feel safe. Um, but you realize that there are some things that you don't quite understand. Who are the people on campus that you can turn to say, hey, I'm dealing with this. And I recognize, here's that part again. I recognize that I don't have all the answers. I'm hoping, as someone who leads this group or someone who has this life experience, that you can either give me some tips, or are there resources on campus? Can we all sit down together and have a conversation and how we can provide safety to this person? Your coworkers are your resources. Conversations that you're having, resources come from that. Use your community. We're telling students to find their community. I want to tell faculty, staff, you all have to do the same thing. Not only are you finding your community, but use your community because they are also a resource. It's okay for you not to have all the answers, but that student watching you work for them and doing the best that you can means so much to them because you're telling them that they belong here and I'm going to do everything that I can to make this happen. Start with the people around you and how you can make sure that they feel safe. And if you're not, and sometimes you aren't the person to have that conversation with, but there is somebody on campus that they can have that conversation with. Find them.
Yeah. I hear a couple pieces in this. The first one is look in the mirror and is this something that you can and should address right off the bat? You're parking really close. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
I don't want to have to pull Ebony in as our HOA president because I know she'll take care of it. But can you're parking close. Can we talk about it? That the student just looking first. Can I can I have this conversation?
Hmm.
And can I provide that person with the respect of my honesty? Are there ground rules I can point to that can say, hey, let's respect each other, but this might be a harder conversation? Can they take that step? And if not, what are the resources that can help them? Is it a mentor? Is it a leader in the organization? Like you said, to pull them in. And then from that person's perspective, how they can make sure that you are feeling safe. So looking at that and addressing it and having that bridge between the people. And if not, looking at, all right, where are the resources? Where are the
Hmm.
resources of people that are going to be better at helping than I could be? And that
Absolutely.
humility of looking for them and pulling them in. And I love that framework. If there are ruptures and if there isn't success. As we're drawing closer to our time, I want to get back to some of the work that you're doing on campuses. And as you are working in some of these areas, they interact so much. The idea of building belonging and the idea of civil discourse, it's like
Hmm.
they're inextricably woven together. Giving people the skill sets to have that that the conversations that aren't always easy, but almost always are important. And at the same time, how that interplays with the building of a belonging among people that has such great value. So as you reflect on some of many stages you've been on and the places you've been able to speak, and if you could think of some sort of the parting wisdom of strategy, the tactical takeaway, how someone can do it, what's a good thing to put in their pocket to take with them if they are one, a student leader, just running a residence floor or working in new student orientation or a leader of a sorority or student government or just a person in a position of leadership. If they were able to keep, think about those, you're on a stage and you see that light bulb go off with some of the tactical stuff that you give for leaders, and then something for those that manage them. What's some of those ways that you've been involved in seeing that really works when you're doing a training of those orientation leaders or those student leaders and working with the people that are training them? Some advice for those that are convening the conversation that you've seen really connect in your time on stages and doing student and professional trainings. What are some of those just quick tidbit takeaways that are amazing?
So I would give a couple of things and consider this a teaser for my grounded confidence keynote as well as workshop. I'll give you this teaser because I think these are something or things that you can do today. For my, student leaders, really anyone. I know you said I know you said certain people, but this works for everyone. Once you have those difficult conversations, maybe, I want you to, the D in ground, I want you to decide how you'll move forward. I never, you know how they say, never go to bed angry or whatever the case is. Decide how you will move forward after this conversation. So that can look like, I realize we weren't able to solve all the world's problems in this one conversation, but here's what I'm committed to doing. Or, I know we didn't have a lot of time because I have a meeting, but I want you to know my door is always open. Or let's get something on the calendar right now. Or you decide to move forward. It's not, let me make sure I also say this. It's not let's agree to disagree. We got to get that right out of our phrase library. It's not let's agree to disagree. It's deciding how you're going to move forward. So it also can be something along the lines of, okay, so let's agree that this is how we're going to handle this event moving forward. It's always going to be on a Monday. I'm just making this up as I go. That is something that is so important for you to do because, again, you're telling the person, I see you, I hear you, and you deserve respect in this situation. So, how we move forward is so important to me because, again, you are creating a culture that you want to see. This goes for everyone. David, you also said the word connect. I always feel like connection is in everything that I do. I think connection will allow us to change the world. That's what I genuinely believe. Something I think that we forget to do, whether it's an administrator talking to a student, or a student leader, student orientation leader speaking with a student, or somebody maybe above them, is name what connects. Name what connects. I say that because sometimes we forget that. Maybe you're talking to the student who doesn't feel safe. Maybe you're talking to the student who's like, you all did this and you didn't keep us in mind for this, or whatever that might look like. Because trust me, that's going to happen during orientation as well. Naming what connects looks something like taking a step back and reminding them that you are in this together. So you say something like, I hear you, and I realize we both care about your future. I know we both care about everybody feeling like they belong. I know we both care that LGBTQ students feel like they have a voice in this conversation. Whatever that connection is, or it could even be on a larger level, I know that we both care about this country and we want to see it do better. Whatever that connection is so important. And those are two little teasers, but I mean, this is something that you all can do today. So when you start having these conversations, maybe it gets a little bit heated, or maybe you're tense, or you feel yourself, because that happens as soon as you feel it in your body. Maybe you're overwhelmed. I want you to remember what connects you. How does that student connect with you? What is that shared common ground that you have? It can be something as silly. I have Lego behind me, but it could be you connect because you both love Lego. I know, again, this can sound really silly, but it makes a difference because you are connecting in that moment. And again, the D in my grounded confidence framework is decide how you move forward in that situation, because they know no matter what, they can always come back and talk to you. And you can do
Oh,
it now. You can do this right now.
I love that. I love that. And yes, the connection. I know my kid would love that Lego Black Panther. Like it just go nuts over it. I mean, but I
And
think,
we're connected already.
and I think that that simplicity of just trying to look at the word and
Mm,
finding connection, common ground, where you and I both
hmm.
agree, care, want that desire, that belief. What is that connective tissue, the and between us? I love that. And that I would add a D, the deliberate decision that we are moving forward. That
Yes,
this is
yes.
because then it feels like I'm not just venting and I'm not just here to receive you venting. It's there's something, as you keep saying, being seen when someone says, because I see you and because I hear you and because I believe there is that connective tissue, I want to do this as a result. And that builds that connection even more. I love those two very tangible, very specific
Yeah,
takeaways.
absolutely. And you know what has been a great example of somebody feeling like they're heard and listened to is this conversation. Every time I've said something and I don't know that you realize it, you've taken these bullet points out of it. And I think it's been a great example of you have really listened. And I'd say that you wouldn't have listened,
Sorry, what'd you say?
but you've really listened to this conversation and what I'm talking about. And I think this is a great example of being seen and heard in action in real time. That's what that looks like. Because this whole time I've been like, dang, he really is listening to this. He's really getting something from this. And that feels so good. It feels so good. And everybody deserves to feel that way.
And I know that everybody is watching and listening, and you are being seen for the value that you are bringing to all of them right now so that they can be better, especially in these first 30 days, especially when
Yes.
the opportunity for a great first impression and building those bonds is right there for all these student leaders, for all these students, and for all those that work with them to be able to build communities where people can be fully seen for who they are, heard for what they believe, and included into a community that values them. So thank you. I know that many of these people watching will want to bring you to hear the rest of not just the ideas, but thus the next step of how they can implement them.
Yep.
And we'd love, as Campus Speak, we'd love to help you. For whether it's bringing people in, to your schools and building communities or the leadership. We'd love to help you bring Ebony to your campus to work with your students because I know there's few things that make her happier than being able to have that kind of impact on the students and those that work with them. So thank you all for being here with us. We'll be continuing with our webinar with new topics to come and amazing people that we have lined up. And again, thank you all for being here with us. Ebony, you're amazing, and we appreciate you doing so much good out there.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And I'm definitely looking forward to connecting. So thank you.